I built Clash Royale in Minecraft, and this is the deep dive into how I did it. Most of you have probably come from the main video where I go very briefly over how I built Clash Royale in Minecraft, but this is the deep dive into exactly how I did it. If you haven't seen that video yet, I would highly recommend watching that one before this one so you know what's happening. So I'll link it in the top right corner if you want to go check that out, or you can stay here and I'll try to explain things as best as I can. I'm gonna try and explain things in a way that is easy to understand enough, but also if you know Redstone and you really want to figure it out, you can also, you know, kind of reverse engineer some of the stuff I built here. Just so, like, you know, I'm trying to make as many people understand what's happening as possible. I'm not going to explain what every single bit of redstone dust does in this entire thing, because that would be way too much. I'm going to try to go over the approximate function and stuff of this game. So first, let's just go through chronologically what would actually happen when you play the game. So first things first, you would hit this button to select your team, and this is some spaghetti redstone down here, but yeah, essentially what it does, this bit, all it does is it locks this door and opens that door. Pretty simple. It also plays some note block sounds and lets you into this room. Now this room is the first bit of slightly more complicated redstone. So on each slice, every single time you hit this note block here, this observer triggers. It extends this observer down to trigger this bottom line, which adds 1 to the count of total cards, because this section also needs to count how many cards you have chosen, make sure it's 8. So when it is turned on, it will move this observer down, just like that. It'll trigger that line very briefly, and this dispenser or dropper puts 1 item into this hopper. These two are perfectly balanced so that when this hopper goes above 8 items, it sends a signal, and when this dropper goes below 8 items, it sends a signal, so that it is able to figure out when you've got exactly 8 items in the that are selected. So this, as well as that though, back in the slice here, this observer is sent down obviously, but then this also triggers this copper bulb to turn on, and then a comparator reads that copper bulb to see whether it's turned on or not, and if it is turned on, it will push this piston down. Then, once all your cards are selected, this line is triggered here, and that activates every single one of these repeaters leading into this block that was extended if this copper bulb is on. And when it does that, it not only resets this observer to bring it back up here, it also dispenses the card that you have just played. So in this case, it's the Royal Ghost. So yeah, that is just one of the slices in the thing. I think this is a pretty smart system. The only way I could imagine it breaks is if 2 cards are selected within the same redstone tick as each other. So that's relatively unlikely, but I can't think of a way to fix it, so I'm not going to. But yeah, that's really the only possible way it could be broken. And if it is broken, all I need to do is move 1 item from this hopper to the dropper, or vice versa. Anyway, once the cards are selected and this line is triggered to dispense all the cards that you have selected, they all run along this this water stream, along with, at the furthest point, is this dropper that drops a gold nugget. Now, this gold nugget will be at the end of the flow of items, so all the cards will arrive to their destination before that gold nugget, and I'll explain why in just a second. So, once all the cards are flowing through this water stream, they get caught in this fence, drop down here, and into this item filter. So this item filter filters for every single card in the game. It detects which ones you have, and it is also in order of most expensive to least expensive, so that when you're actually playing the game, the cards are in the correct order. And when an item flows along here, it will, let's say, goes into this hopper because you chose this card, and that's the Elixir Giant. So yeah, let's say you chose the Elixir Giant. The item would flow along here, fall into this hopper, activating the item filter, which activates this T flip-flop. It's a kind of a weird one, but I kind of needed it to be. to fit in the space and do what I needed to do. But it flips this up, deactivating this comparator, unlocking this hopper, which I'll come back in a second. This is how the game resets all the cards. But what it also does is it comes down here and dispenses this shulker containing the card that is on those 2 pieces of paper, as well as the amount of shovels it would take to have the correct comparator signal strength for the elixir count that it occupies, or it costs. So it will move it from this dropper here down into this dropper down here. It won't be dispensed out yet into this hopper line yet, but it will be moved down into this dropper. Once all 8 cards are selected, there should be 8 of these bulbs that are pushed up, and also 8 shulker boxes that got dispensed into the bottom row of droppers down here. Then, once they are all done, the gold nugget that I previously talked about is at the end of the string of items. So all the other items will come through first, then the gold nugget will arrive because it physically has a further distance to travel. So it will come down, it won't get sorted into any of these item filters, it will go all the way to the end into this hopper, which will be detected by this comparator, activating all of those droppers. The gold nugget will then be returned through this hopper line back to where it was, but the shulker boxes that were selected will be spat out in order. As you can see, these line of repeaters slowly dispense out each one in order of most expensive to least expensive, or the least expensive to most expensive. I can't remember which way around it is, but it's in order out of this dropper and into the card elixir counting station thingy. I'll go explain that in a second, but first there's also another function of this section. When this filter, filters an item, it will also take that item. So let's just say it's the guard now. That guard item that was just filtered in to activate everything over there will be taken down into this dropper down here, and then at the same time the shulkers are dispensed, these will be dispensed in the same order into this hopper line down here, into this dropper, and up to the armor stand display section or unit. I don't know what to call them, but it's those items with the custom models on them will get displayed on an armor stand, and I'll show you how that works right now. So the card that is played will in order come through this water stream into this line of hoppers, and they will take each of these sections down here will take one item. So the first item to flow through will go into this little bit will lock the hopper, allowing the next item to just continue to flow past all the way one by one all the way to the end. Now I've highlighted one of these slices so you can clearly see what one slice looks like. If you watched my main video, you would know that these command blocks are only here for restocking arrows to break the armor stands to reset it. But yeah, because I don't want to keep coming back and resetting the arrows, restocking the arrows when they run out. So yeah, basically each of these slices will have one of the cards in them. Once the slice on the end here receives an item, it will trigger all of the slices at the same time to dispense an armor stand, then dispense the item onto the armor stand so that it will be displayed on the armor stand. So the armor stand will be dispensed into this location here. Let me grab that. The armor stand will be dispensed into this location. See if I can open this area. Place it there. It won't be on an angle, it'll be facing this way. But I had to place it on an angle there. But then it will dispense the item onto the armor stand. So let's just go ahead and get a carved pumpkin because it is a retextured carved pumpkin. The carved pumpkin will be placed on there, and then the trapdoor down here will open to drop it down to its final location. Now, I needed to drop it down because the custom model can only go so much below an armor stand. The custom model will actually, even though it's on the head of this armor stand here, it will be displayed down in this section here so that they can see what card it is they're about to play as. Now, the armor stands will sometimes unrender when they go out of your screen, and because the armor stand is all the way up here when the card's all the way down here, they unrender when they're not supposed to, but there's not really anything I can do about that. And yeah, I mean, it's about as good as I can get it, so I'm not going to complain about it. Once the game is over, the reset line will shoot an arrow out of this dispenser. I'm just going to grab a bow and shoot it out, just like this. Hang on. Just like that. It will break the armor stand, break the item. The armor stand and the item will flow down here. I think I'm in creative mode, so it didn't actually break and drop the items. But if the game was actually running, that would be what happens. It would dispense both items, both the custom model and the armor stand, back up here. The armor stand will actually be pulled out by this item filter and sent back through the system to redistribute them into the correct places, while the custom model will go back into these item filters, which filters them back into these droppers that will drop them when the deck is selected the next game. So that is the entire armor stand display unit explained. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let's move on to the actual card that you're going to be playing as. So the shulker box, which stores all the information for the card, gets dispensed out of... Let me see if I can find it. I don't know why there's a hopper there. That's not supposed to be there. They get dispensed out of here. They flow through this water stream in order, again, just like the armor stands, up this bubble column and into this very similar circuit here. So this circuit, I forgot to highlight this one, but it's very, very similar to the armor stand one at least in the top half. It will lock itself every time an item flows in here, and it will eventually fill up every single one with the cards in order. And then it will instead of dispensing onto an armor stand, it will dispense the shulker box into this shulker unloader, which then will pull out two items, the first two items in the shulker box out, while keeping every other item in. The first two items, if you remember, in the shulker boxes, let me go back so you can see. The first two items in each shulker box is the card that it is. So if I look at these shulker boxes that I've just kept up here, you can see that this is the goblin. The first two items in the shulker is this goblin, the renamed piece of paper, and the rest is how much signal strength is for the elixir cost. I'll explain the elixir cost in a second, but first we'll go with the actual card. The card the first two items that are then pulled out get sucked down all the way into this dropper. Then, at the start of the game, one of those pieces of paper will be spat out into this water stream along this absolutely massive array of redstone. I don't know. Array was a cool word. I don't know if it's actually called an array. I don't know what it means really. But it gets spat out into this. And I'm going to break this down into just small chunks. Now, this entire system is just 32 of these slices. And each slice is one card. I explained this in the actual video, in the main video, but I'm going to explain it in more detail here. So each of these slices it is allocated to one card. So the slice I pulled out for this demonstration is for the P.E.K.K.A. So you can see every single one of these item filters actually is filtering for the P.E.K.K.A. card, or the piece of paper renamed with P.E.K.K.A. So each of these slices can also be broken up into 8 more smaller slices. Each of the 8 slices is obviously the 8 cards that you're playing. So let's take a look at just one of these, which is highlighted in yellow here. Let's say this card in this slice is the P.E.K.K.A. just for the demonstration's sake. We'll take one of these pieces of paper here. The item that is dropped out from the dropper I showed you over there will run along this water stream and get sucked in by this item filter. It will then get returned back to the dropper through this water stream. But if you saw it, these command blocks these command blocks are here that drop the items. They just clone the chest, break the chest so that all the items drop into the water stream. But obviously in the actual design, the command blocks wouldn't be here. It would just be a bunch of droppers dropping the correct kit into the water stream. But yeah, the items are dropped along here, but how does it know which one to go in? I think it actually... Oh, I made a mistake here while replicating the chunks. This is supposed to be a full block of wool. Just like that. The other ones are wrong here as well, so I'm going to quickly go and change all of these out. Just like that. That's why the items didn't actually go into the right place that time. But what happens is when this item is sucked out, it triggers this this piston here, which pushes the redstone block that's usually here over to here, showing that this is the card that's selected for this slice. And as you can see now, this is the only one that's open. I think I missed a couple more blocks. I cloned the slice over there out to here, so there are probably a couple mistakes, but there we go. That's better. Let's go ahead and clone this along every single one again. There we go. It's actually fixed now. But yeah, this slice will now be open. These trapdoors are open, so that means the item can now flow along and fall in down here. So let's quickly do another demonstration. Let's see. So we have the pecker, I think, in our inventory right here. If we go ahead and drop one into this water stream, you'll see that this piece of paper will return here. Then the items will be destroyed over here, or dropped over here, and then fall down into this slice. So let's go ahead and try that. So if we drop a pecker into there, it will return the paper and drop the items, and this water stream obviously takes it to the place where you pick them up that I specified in the main video. So yeah, that's obviously cloned over 8 times. So if this one was selected, it would do the exact same thing. But instead, these trapdoors would be the ones opening, and then this would be where the items are returned. So that's how this entire system works. There are 16 cards in the version of the game I displayed in the main video, but there is space for another 16, making a total of 32 if you really wanted to expand it that far. Now let's move on to the elixir count. I'll talk about how the elixir generates in just a second, but this is how the game processes how much elixir each card costs. So as I said, down in the shulker box that was dispensed in each of these slices, that shulker box sits here for the entire duration of the game. It is constantly being read by this comparator, which it sends it first of all down to this comparator, which takes information from both just there, and also this line that stores how much elixir your team has. So this line of comparators, not this top diagonal line, that's kind of unrelated. This line of comparators here, it stores the elixir that your team is at, and this comparator in the middle subtracts that and figures out if you have enough elixir to play that card. And if you do, it will unlock the door. Let's see if I can figure out how this works. I need to remove 2. There we go. Unlocks this door and allows you to jump down. Pretty cool. But this door is also locked by this pressure plate down here, which locks it when there's no items sitting on the pressure plate, which means if the kit isn't ready to be picked up, you know, it closes the door so that you can't jump down and pick up nothing and spend the elixir. So I think that's pretty cool. Back to this comparator that reads the signal from the shulker box. It also sends it up here through this line of comparators up to this pink circuit that is again stacked 8 times for the 8 cards in your deck. And this will store your elixir count in a pulse extender, and anyone who knows how a pulse extender works will understand that when you deactivate a pulse extender, the redstone dust will count down every single one of those power levels until it hits 0. So that's actually I think this is a really smart way of handling elixir. I really like this idea. So for example, let's go ahead and actually put a crafter here so we can actually demonstrate what it would be like if we actually had an elixir cost here. So let's just say this card costs 3 elixir. Pretty simple. This would not go into that because it doesn't redirect. Hang on a minute. We'll put the crafter here just for now. Let's just say this costs 3 elixir. As you can see, this comparator is reading that, outputting 3 elixir, and this pulse extender is now set to 3 elixir. Or 3 signal strength. And yeah, this stores it until it needs to use it. And when it needs to use it is when you use the card. So let's say you jump down the card to shoot to equip yourself with the kit of that card. This observer will detect that you jumped down into that card, it will send the signal up this line here, all the way up into this block here, which pushes this piston across. This redstone block will move to here and deactivate this line, which also pulls out this block that is powering this comparator, allowing this pulse extender to count down. That also retracts this block, which unlocks this, this observer, allowing it to actually output, signals. And this pulse extender will count down, activating the observer every single time, and triggering this line enough times to subtract the correct signal strength. Now, because of technicalities, each card actually has one less signal strength than it actually costs. So let's say the miner, I don't know, no, that miner's not a good example. The Royal Ghost costs 3 elixir. The Shulker box doesn't actually contain 3 powers levels of signal. It actually only contains 2. But because it also resets to 0 and then back up to 3 once this activates again, it adds 1 onto whatever, whatever signal strength you had, ending back up at 3 for the Royal Ghost. I don't know if that made sense, but, it's kind of a technicality, so I thought I'd explain that because, it's not the most intuitive thing, and if you added up the signal strengths in the Shulkers, you'd be confused why they don't add up to the correct elixir costs. But yeah, that's how this circuit works. Let's go ahead and see if it actually works. I'm going to cut off this line in case it breaks anything. I don't know if it will, but just in case, we will go ahead and trigger this line right here to unpower, and then as you can see, that sends the correct amount of signal strength over there, and it happened a bit quickly, so let's go ahead and do that again and see if I can free cam to show you what it looks like. I don't have night vision anymore in free cam, but hopefully you can still understand. You can watch this tick down, as well as the observer will send the correct amount of signals over to this line here. So let's see if we can get a good angle where you can see both. 2, 3, 4, just like that. That is correct. I got confused for a second. But yeah, as I said, the signal strength is one lower than it should be. So this card would technically cost 4 elixir, even though it's only sending a 3 signal strength through. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'm going to reset this. Just like that. This line will trigger whenever the elixir cost has been reset and subtracted properly, and then it will reset all of these so that it works. It's ready for next time. But yeah, that's how the elixir reduction works. And before I move on to the elixir generation, I'm going to explain how this resets. So this shulker again is sitting here, and when the game resets, it obviously needs those 2 pieces of paper that are in that dropper back. Oh, by the way, there's 2 pieces of paper in the dropper, because if, for example, this paper, the first paper that was released, hasn't made it back yet, and the player's already played a second card, it needs to, have a second one ready. But the limit should be 2, so that's why there's only 2 there. It should be all good. That's the reason, just to spam prevent it, basically. Anyway, the shulker back here obviously needs those 2 pieces of paper back into this shulker to store those items again. So when the game resets, this dispenser or dropper is triggered twice. It will 2 of the sets of that kit will be sent back, which is kind of wasteful, but there's not really much I can do about it unless I want to add a whole new hopper line that unlocks when it resets, which feels like a whole deal that I don't want to deal with. So a bit of wasted stuff is fine. I don't plan on building this in survival anyway, but Anyway, those 2 items will make its way all the way around, but and when they come back, they actually come back through this bubble column around the back here, because there's not enough space to bring them back over there. So they come all the way around here, through here, and when the game is off, this line is actually unlocked. So that will pull the items out, those 2 pieces of paper out this way, instead of continuing down the water stream back to the dropper. It brings them over here and restocks it back into the shulker box through this line, this hopper line there. Once they are back, the shulker is, once this one and every slice has all its pieces of paper back, these shulker boxes are destroyed, they get sucked off by the hopper, and sent back through this line, again in order because this all happens at the same time. So this one will be first, second, third, and so on. They will come back in order, up the dropper, the bubble column, and into this hopper line, which I explained before, where these hoppers unlock when those cards are played. So they come back through and say this card was played in the game. This one would be the first one, so it's the first one sent over there. It's the first one to come back, and that means when it comes back, it comes into this hopper. It gets sent down back into its correct spot, and this T flip-flop is reset through an observer observing this comparator, detecting when an item flows through. So yeah, because they come back in order, they get reset in order as well. And yeah, once all of them are back, the next game is ready to be played. Now, on to the Elixir Generation. So, with the Elixir Generation, I've got this massive clock here. I don't know, there's probably a better way of doing this, but this is how I chose to do it. There's a piston feed tape. First of all, over here, that stores the Elixir count you're on. Where is it? Down here. This is a piston feed tape that is probably a little bit overcomplicated, but it's fine. It stores the amount of Elixir that you are on, and the redstone block moves up and down, and that changes the signal strength read by this comparator, which goes through this whole thing that basically, you know, stops it from being spammed on and off, because when a piston pushes the block, it technically doesn't exist for a second, and then it reappears, so this line actually flashes a bit. And this basically just prevents that from happening with a couple pulse extenders. But yeah, this circuit stores the Elixir count. This sends the Elixir count down to that line I was explaining before. It also sends the Elixir count to here, inside the room, so you can actually see what Elixir you're on. It also sends the Elixir all the way up into the coach's box, which I actually didn't explain in the main video, because the main video was already getting way too long and I didn't want to extend it out any further. But this is the coach's box, which is accessible from the team rooms, and the Elixir count is also available up here. It's about 7 seconds delayed from when the actual Elixir count changes, but there's nothing I can do about that. That's how fast comparators send signals, so yeah. Anyway, back down here, this Elixir bar is basically controlled by this circuit here, which if I were to spam this with a whole bunch of add Elixir, minus Elixir, it will actually break. So this circuit basically controls how fast the add Elixir signals and minus Elixir signals come in. So while the system is minusing Elixir, it is actually storing the Elixir that should be added, instead of, you know, actually adding it. And once it is done minusing, then it adds them so that it's not spammed into the piston feed tape and breaks the feed tape. Anyway, this clock here is the actual clock that counts how much your Elixir is at. And this clock can technically be infinitely adjusted. I've just put it at an arbitrary amount. I don't know if this is actually a balanced speed. But again, if it wasn't, I could just, you know, easily adjust these repeaters, maybe extend it out a bit or whatever I need to do. And yeah, that I can easily balance the speed of Elixir from here. And the clock is actually split up into multiple segments because the Elixir speed needs to change, and the speed of the Elixir actually works kind of different to in real Clash Royale. So if you play Clash Royale, you'll know that the Elixir speed changes and ramps up as the game goes on. It starts at just the normal speed, and then once overtime hits, once you have 1 minute remaining on your normal gameplay time, it doubles. And then when there's, I think, 1 minute left of overtime, it doubles, or triples, not doubles. It triples from the default amount. But because I don't have princess towers or like tower troops, because if I put like a skeleton up here, it would just shoot your own team as well. Because I can't have the tower troops, I decided to give the other team an advantage in a different way. So when you kill a tower, instead of activating their king tower, you actually give them a faster elixir rate. So that means there are 2 increases, 1 for each princess tower. Then as well as that, I've also got king tower activations through a skulk sensor down here. So there's actually in total 5 increases in elixir, or 5 different levels of elixir speed, which also includes the overtime, which increases both sides elixir by a little bit. So there are 5 levels, 1 for the default and 4 bonuses. And I needed to figure out how to do that. That's why there's 5 sections of this clock. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all for the 5 different elixir speeds. So if it is at the slowest, 1 elixir generates every time this clock goes all the way up and all the way back. And then for every additional speed up the elixir does, or increase in speed the elixir does, this piston feed tape moves this redstone block over by 1, increasing this comparator, which, let's just go ahead and demonstrate here. How do I do that? Press this button, it increases this by 1, the signal strength comes out at 1, and deactivates this last section of the clock, which means now the clock only needs to reach all the way up to here instead of all the way up there. So that increases the speed, and if I increase it again, it obviously deactivates that section. You saw the pistons pushed down, and now that part of the clock is deactivated, leaving just this section of the clock, and so on. I'm going to go ahead and actually reset this somehow. Let's see if I just add it enough times. Just like that, it will reset, and now all the clock is active again. So yeah, that's how the Elixir Generation works. Pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool way of doing it. Adapting it from the actual game, because the actual mechanic wouldn't work in this situation, at least not as well. Anyway, now we come into this middle section, this absolutely spaghettification of a redstone contraption. And this is all the towers and everything. These circuits down here, I partially explained it in the main video. These spawn zoglins. This is a queue for zoglins. They're not here because I cloned this over, and entities don't get cloned if you clone things over from a long distance. But this would be a zoglin queue. I can actually do it. I just realized. No, wait. This is a Ravager queue. I got it wrong. And also, the pressure plates are all pressed down because of Axiom. Hang on a minute. There we go. Now the Ravagers are queuing up, and they should all queue in at just the right place. They'll all make their way to their own locations. Also, these guys are being spawned in by command blocks, if you didn't realize. And I only do command blocks because I don't want to restock the Ravagers. But if this is to be built in survival, the Ravagers would have to be stocked manually, you know, like from a raid farm. And you can extend this queue out infinitely, so you can store as many Ravagers as you want. This is for the King Tower, so the Ravager is for the King Tower because it has, I think, 50 health. So every time the game starts, this Ravager will be sent up through this rail, up into this, not this one, it will be sent up through this rail, over this way, into this tower. The lava will obviously go away when the game starts, so it won't die. And it will just sit there until you go and hit it. I just accidentally broke a block. Hang on. Don't go down there. Don't go. Okay, no, we're fine. We're fine. That was close. That was very close. Anyway, it'll go down there. I think it will go into this tower. And then this tripwire will detect when it is killed. And obviously the Skulk sensor will detect when it takes damage for King Tower activations. I'm not going to explain again how this works. Because it's just way too complicated. This works in a very similar way, it's just much more cramped. I thought this was a pretty cool system, so because it's so cramped and I can't actually have an observer at this level where the string is to detect the Zoglin dying, I decided to use an observer that extends when the game starts. So the Zoglin will pop up, the observer will extend out. There's supposed to be a minecart here, but again, entities don't clone properly. And it will detect when this string is deactivated, which means the mob is dead. And the minecart, the hopper minecart that would be on this honey block right here, like just ever so slightly clips over this hopper so that it is able to pick up any items that land here, stopping the string from deactivating, just in case that happens. And also it will just bring those items down here and destroy them and drop them into lava. Lava cauldron down here. So I thought that was pretty cool. Again, entities don't clone properly, so that minecart doesn't exist, but you just have to trust me that it exists in the actual thing. So yeah, those are the towers. They are pretty annoying. They're not the best designs, and if I ever update this game, I will be updating the towers to use skulk sensors instead, because the string with observers kind of multi-triggers when you don't want the trigger. The items get stuck. There's XP orbs that get stuck, which means if you stand back around the correct spot, you can actually hold the XP orbs on the string, which means your tower never gets destroyed. So if you really got sweaty and tactical at this game, you could theoretically do that if it was a last second thing and you had to keep your tower alive last second. But you know, there's heaps of problems with this system, but you know, I'm pretty proud of it as it is. If I ever update the game, I'll update it and make it more flawless. But anyway, now for the actual score tracking. This system over here tracks the score and the time. This is again spaghetti redstone. I know, but yeah. Let's see if I can find it down here. These droppers, I really like the way that this actually keeps track of score. I think it's a pretty genius method. Whenever a tower is destroyed, signals are sent over, and let's just say this side gets a tower destroyed. This will dispense a wooden shovel over to this side, which means that this side will now have more shovels. As you can see, if this side has more than 2 shovels, it will detect that and send a signal up here telling the game that there is a team in the lead. So this block only extends if there is a team in the lead at that moment. And if there's no team in the lead, obviously I can bring that shovel back. And as you can see, this piston retracts, that's the word. Anyway, yeah. So based on the score, these droppers will have different amount of items in them, and if there is a team in the lead, as I said, this block will be here, and this orange line will trigger when the normal gameplay time runs out, and yeah, because this block only extends when there's a team in the lead, it will only end the game if there is a team in the lead when overtime hits. If there is no team in the lead when overtime hits, the game will not be reset and the game will continue. And then at the end of the game, whichever team is in the lead will win. And also, because it's overtime, if you destroy a tower, you win. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a bit of spaghetti, so I don't even remember what half of these lines do. I know this one is triggered when the king tower is active or is killed. Which there's a similar line over here, but it's slightly different. Yeah, those trigger when the king tower is killed, instantly ending the game and giving the win to the other team. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That's how it keeps track of the score. Right below it, this section here is how it keeps track of time. So even though there's a gigantic scoreboard up there with the time, the game time is not actually tracked by the scoreboard. It's tracked down here. There are 2 clocks, one for overtime, one for normal time, and as those run out, they trigger the respective lines to tell the rest of the game that the time is up. Pretty simple. That part's actually relatively simple. There's not much to talk about when it comes to that. Finally, there's one last thing I need to talk about, and that is the scoreboard. This is a pretty cool looking scoreboard on the outside, and it looks a bit less cool on the inside. It's all spaghetti redstone again, but you know, it works and that's all that matters. Yeah, as I said, the scoreboard keeps track of time, but it isn't actually the official timekeeper of the game. It kind of is just there to display it. It is pretty much perfectly lined up, or is perfectly lined up with the game time down there. So that's good. And also these scoreboards are pretty bad at actually keeping track of score. As I said this in the main video, but these scoreboards always break. This is a pretty bad design, if I'm going to be honest. Some constructive criticism. This is a pretty cool idea with the, you know, the pistons pulling the blocks back so you can clearly see it rather than the blocks being in shadow. Like, for example, if I replace that there, the blocks would be in shadow even without shaders. It would be in shadow, so you can't really tell the difference between the colors. But yeah, I think it's a cool idea with the blocks being pushed forwards, but the execution is just horrible. I don't know why I had a separate piston feed tape to push the blocks across when I could have just had piston feed tape push the blocks across. I don't know what I was thinking. I will improve this if I ever update the game. But yeah, This scoreboard is pretty self-explanatory, except again, spaghetti redstone, so I'm not going to even bother explaining it. And by the way, this section down here basically just, you know, spam proofs the scoreboard. So if 2 towers are destroyed in quick succession, it doesn't overload the scoreboard and break it. So that's that section down there. Also, while we're here on the scoreboard, the scoreboard I have built here is actually heavily inspired by the Adelaide Oval scoreboard, which is the stadium in my city. I live in Adelaide, South Australia, and this is the scoreboard we have this is the oldest scoreboard of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere, I believe. I'll put a picture on screen. It's like a fully manually operated scoreboard that's on the end of our stadium. I'll show a picture of the full stadium as well so you can kind of see the context. It's placed like next to a heritage listed like plot of land which they had to keep because like it's heritage listed, so they couldn't build anything over the top of it. So they had to keep the hill in front of it, and now it's called The Hill. I know, creative naming. And so I kind of try to replicate it here because I really like the look of it. But yeah, that's what that's inspired off of. Just thought I'd add that. Pretty cool. And just before the video ends, can I just talk about how cool these little guys look? Look at them. I need to fill in some blank space. I thought I'd put some banners there, kind of inspired by the king model in the game, but I think this is so cool. They're so I'm so proud of these like eyes, these trapdoors as eyes. With the little whatever that middle bit's called. I don't know. But I just think they're so cool. But other than that, I think that's the entire game to a certain extent explained. Again, I can't explain, and I'm not gonna bother trying to explain the entire thing. It's just way too complicated. If you want to take a look at it, I have the world download in my Ko-Fi for supporters and stuff. So if you want to check out this world and download it and play it for yourself, consider supporting me on Ko-Fi. This project took so unbelievably long, so if you enjoyed, please subscribe. Comment what you want to see changed in the next update, because if this video does well, I will update this game. I have plans for possible ways of implementing spells into the game, which is pretty exciting. But other than that, tell me about your ideas for this game. Again, it all must be possible in vanilla survival Minecraft, so you know, try to keep it limited to that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Anyway, that's about it. I'll see you next time.